Welcome to Dispatch, and I'm Kartikeya Sharma, and let's straight away cut across to the visuals of ASEAN leaders meeting Prime Minister Modi. These are the visuals. He had already felicitated them, you can see. Most of the leaders have come. Prime Minister Modi is, you can see Sushma Swaraj, Ajit Doval, National Security Advisor, India's Foreign Minister, all in attendance. So these visuals were taken a few minutes back. You can see the common muffler. So this is ASEAN India Commemorative Summit. And I'm joined by my colleague Ramesh Ramchandran from Studio. Ramesh, what does this ASEAN India Commemorative Summit have for these 10 nations and us in terms of issues?
Well, Kartikeya, as we're watching these visuals from New Delhi of the plenary, which will get underway just moments away from now, and as we wait for the opening remarks by Prime Minister Modi, followed by Singapore Prime Minister's remarks,
Excellencies, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the ASEAN India Commemorative Summit. Though we are celebrating 25 years of our partnership, our shared voyage goes back thousands of years. It is a privilege for India to host all the ASEAN leaders for the second time in 5 years. Tomorrow, you will be our honored guest at our Republic Day celebrations. The presence of my brothers and sisters from all our ASEAN partners at this joyous celebration is unprecedented. Your collective presence here has also touched the hearts of my 1.25 billion fellow Indians. It highlights the importance of our strategic partnership, placing ASEAN at the center of India's Act East policy. Our friendship has been nurtured by our shared cultural and civilization linkages. The Ramayana, the ancient India epic, continues to be a valuable shared legacy in ASEAN and the Indian subcontinent. We have organized a Ramayana festival with troops from ASEAN countries to showcase our common cultural treasure through this great epic. Other major religions, including Buddhism, also bind us closely. Islam, in many parts of Southeast Asia, has distinctive Indian connection going back several centuries. We have also released a set of commemorative stamps to celebrate our common heritage. Your Majesty, Excellencies, this summit is the grand finale of our joint year-long commemorative activities organized in India and in ASEAN countries, which provides us a valuable opportunity to review our journey so far and chart our future path. This objective, in my view, is best served through free and friendly discussion among us. Your Majesty, Excellencies, since 1992, our partnership has evolved from sectoral dialogue to strategic partnership Today have third sectoral dialogue mechanism and 7 ministerial level interaction in addition to annual summit meetings. We have made excellent progress in implementing the objective of the ASEAN India Partnership for Peace, Progress and Shared Prosperity through 5-year plan of action. The progress in implementing our third action plan for the period of 2016-2020 is commendable. Capacity building projects have been undertaken through the ASEAN India Cooperation Fund, the ASEAN India Green Fund and ASEAN India Science and Technology Fund. Your Majesty, Excellencies, India shares ASEAN vision to peace and prosperity through a rules-based order for the oceans and seas. Respect for international law, notably UNCLOS, is critical for this. We remain committed to work with ASEAN to enhance practical cooperation and collaboration in our shared maritime domain. During the retreat session, we had an opportunity to discuss ASEAN-India cooperation in maritime domain as one of the key focus areas of growth and development of the Indo-Pacific region. Indeed, maritime cooperation has been an integral part of our discourse throughout our commemorative activities, with the theme resonating in the ASEAN-India Connectivity Summit, in the workshop of Blue Economy, as well as in regular dialogue mechanisms. Humanitarian and disaster relief efforts, security cooperation, and freedom of navigation will be key focus area for our maritime cooperation. The Connectivity Summit was also an affirmation of the linkage that India shares with ASEAN through land, air, maritime, cultural, civilization, and people-to-people relations that date back centuries. Your Majesty, Excellencies, information and communication technology will forge new bonds of digital connectivity among us. This could include new areas of cooperation in a regional high-capacity fiber optic network and a national rural broadband network to digitally connect remote areas. India offers to undertake a pilot project on rural connectivity which would create digital village in Cambodia, Laos, PDR, Myanmar and Vietnam. Success of this project could be replicated in other ASEAN countries. We also offer a training program on telecom and networking technologies to share best practices in policy, regulation and technological development for information and communication technology professionals from ASEAN countries. In order to deepen our understanding and cooperation in financial matters, I propose a dialogue on digital financial inclusion and investment promotion and infrastructure. Combating terror financing jointly is yet another important area where we could work collectively. Your Majesty, Excellencies, our $70 billion trade has grown 25 times over 25 years. Investment from ASEAN and India are robust and growing. We will continue to work with ASEAN to further enhance our trade ties and facilitate interaction among our business community. The success of recent events like the Business and Investment Meet and Expo, the ASEAN India Business Council meeting, in Business Conference, the Startup Festival and Hackathon and at ICT Expo have shown encouraging results. We hope that our Project Development Fund and Quick Impact Project will help our companies integrate into regional value chain particularly in textile and garment, pharmaceuticals, agro-processing, and electronics. Your Majesty, Excellencies, people-to-people connectivity has been the foundation of our close ties for hundreds of years. The Indian diaspora has settled far and wide in Southeast Asia. They are warmly accepted in the local community. Earlier this month, the ASEAN India Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in Singapore recognized their contribution in forging closer ties between us. Held at the same time in New Delhi, at the first conference of members of parliament and mayors with Indian heritage, there was a large representation from ASEAN countries. To build on our historical bonds, I propose that we declare 2019 as the ASEAN India Year of Tourism. We could set up tangible and intangible cultural heritage circuits for further promotion, to promote tourism. The Buddhist tourism circuit could be an important part of this to attract tourists and pilgrims from our region. Your Majesty, Excellencies, India had participated in restoration works to historical structure which attest our enduring civilization bonds. It was a privilege for India to play a role in conservation works of temples in Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos PDR, and Vietnam. A virtual knowledge portal of ASEAN India network of museums could be curate this shared heritage. An important focus, our commemorative events celebrate the power of our youth, our future. The Youth Summit, the Artist Residency, the Musical Festival, and the Startup Festival for digital commerce among our youth were intent for this. We have given a boost to their spirit by giving Youth Award on 24th January. To further empower our youth in our region, I have the pleasure to announce 1,000 fellowships to students and researchers from ASEAN countries for studying integrated PhD programs in Indian Institute of Technology, India's premier institution of imparting knowledge. We would also like to offer dedicated training courses at the Indian Academy of Highway Engineers for ASEAN highway professionals. I also propose that we set up a network of universities to encourage greater inter-university exchanges. Your Majesty, Excellency, in conclusion, let me again join my people in expressing our profound appreciation to each one of you for kindly accepting my invitation and for joining us at this commemorative summit. I now invite Prime Minister of the Republic of Singapore, His Excellency Lee Hsien Loong, to please deliver the opening remarks in Singapore's capacity as the ASEAN Chair for 2018 and the co-chair for this plenary session.
Thank you, Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi of India, Your Majesty and my fellow ASEAN leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to co-chair this plenary session of our ASEAN India Summit as the ASEAN Chair together with Prime Minister Modi. On behalf of ASEAN, I would like to thank India for organizing the numerous commemorative activities for the 25th anniversary of our relations. I'd also express my appreciation for Prime Minister Modi's invitation to the ASEAN member states' leaders to attend tomorrow's 69th Republic Day celebrations as India's chief guest. These gestures show the importance India places on the strengthening of ASEAN-India relations. I would also like to thank Vietnam for its role as the country coordinator of ASEAN-India dialogue relations. Today we mark 25 years of relations between ASEAN and India and 5 years of our strategic partnership. These milestones are an opportunity to celebrate our achievements and chart our way forward. India's ties with Southeast Asia go back far beyond 25 years. Our early interactions were driven by trade and commerce. Artifacts like glass beads and semi-precious stones from southern India have been found in the Malay Peninsula, which are dated as early as the 4th century BC. Both sides also share deep cultural links. The Indian diaspora continues to play an important part in shaping our region and in ASEAN-India relations. About 1/5 of the 31 million overseas Indians live in Southeast Asia, and they've made major contributions in building institutions, national cultures, and identities in their respective countries. This is why Singapore and other ASEAN member states have supported India's dialogue partnership and its entry into the East Asia Summit. We believe that India makes a major contribution to regional affairs, helping to keep the regional architecture open, balanced, and inclusive. There is much more we can do to take the ASEAN-India dialogue partnership forward. One step we can take is to increase our trade and economic cooperation. There is significant potential for further growth. Southeast Asia and India together represent 1/4 of the world's population, about 1.8 billion people, and a combined GDP of more than $4.5 trillion US. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, the RCEP, which is currently being negotiated by ASEAN, India, and other partners, represents a historic opportunity to establish the world's largest trading bloc, which would enable our businesses to harness the region's true potential. Expanding connectivity, air, land, maritime, and digital connectivity, is also important for growth. It will reinforce business and people-to-people links between the two sides and benefit both our peoples. These are just some of the areas where we can develop our relationship. I look forward to exchanging these and other ideas with Prime Minister Modi and my fellow ASEAN leaders during this plenary session to examine how we can further strengthen our strategic partnership in the years to come. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister Lee, for your intervention. And with this, I would now request for the media to please leave the hall. We shall begin with a closed session.
So the Prime Minister has made a request that now the closed-door discussions will begin. His speech is over. What are the biggest takeaways of Prime Minister's speech, Ramesh?
As the theme of the plenary suggests, shared values and common destiny that symbolizes and encapsulates the essence of the discussions and the speeches made there by Prime Minister Modi and his Singaporean counterpart, both harping on the commonalities and convergences that exist between India and ASEAN, and also looking ahead on how to build on those convergences in the areas of defense, security, maritime security in particular, and also people-to-people ties, connectivity, both physical and digital connectivity, and also talking about youth and students in particular. So it's an all-encompassing relationship, and India and ASEAN are not only neighbors, but also share and have big stakes in the wider Indo-Pacific region, which is the confluence of two oceans, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean.
But then, Ramesh, in context of the speech and the subsequent speech by the Premier of Singapore, he spoke of the Indian diaspora and sort of the creative contribution which Indian diaspora has for Southeast Asia. Apart from the diaspora, what binds us together in terms of economy?
Indeed, Karthikeya, as besides Buddhism and Ramayana, India and ASEAN share a lot of commonalities, convergences of interests, concerns and aspirations alike. In terms of economy, already we've seen many of the ASEAN countries, including from Thailand, already investing as part of Prime Minister Modi's flagship program called the Make in India. And one Thai company has most recently set up shop on the outskirts of India's capital, New Delhi, and which project we are given to understand will generate up to 7,000 jobs for the Indian job market. So that in itself shows how seriously the ASEAN countries are taking India in terms of trade and investments. But that said, there are other issues also on the table: defense, security, investments in the other areas, especially in collaboration in co-production and co-manufacture of weapon systems. So all these issues will be on the table when these leaders meet here for the closed-door session in the plenary, which is happening even as we speak in New Delhi.
But then, Ramesh, in terms of the interaction which is going to have, is it substantial or symbolic in context of the Republic Day parade? Where would you say the commemorative meet which is taking place in Delhi, how would you place it?
Well, Karthikeya, it is both high on symbolism and substance alike. From India's perspective, as you may be aware, Karthikeya, and our viewers might also be aware, India's Act East policy is anchored in India's northeastern states, which are all landlocked, and many of them share a common border with Myanmar, which is an ASEAN member. So from that perspective, connectivity becomes very important for the northeastern states in terms of physical infrastructure, digital connectivity and so on. People-to-people ties becomes of paramount importance. From ASEAN's perspective, Karthikeya, when you talk about the Indo-Pacific region, maritime security interests gain prominence, especially given the so-called China's peaceful rise, which has antagonized neighbors far and beyond, including, as you might be aware, at least 5 of 10 ASEAN countries have maritime disputes with China, just as India has a land border dispute with China. And that, to my mind, will bring both regions closer together in the years ahead.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you for this update.